Hello students, so welcome to this platform. So in today's video we want to look at this question from biology. So the question is on reproduction, but the focus today is on the structure of a sperm. Okay, so let's just dive in, read the question together and answer it. So figure 2.1 shows the structure of a mammalian sperm. So this is a structure that is shown to us. Now, the questions. Part A says, so part A1, identify the parts labeled D and E. So we want to know the parts D and E. Okay. Now, before we can answer this question, let's first of all learn something about the structure of sperm. Okay, so with me here, I have drawn another structure, not a perfect one, but it's going to help us do the work. So this is also a structure of the sperm. So basically speaking, the sperm is divided into three regions. We have the head. So this region here is the head. We have the neck or the mid piece. So this region there is the neck. Then the rest of the part is the tail. So this region there is the tail. Now, the head has two parts. We have this part, which we are calling the acrosome, and it has also this part here, the green shaded part. This is called the nucleus. Then the neck region, you can see these things here. So this is the mitochondria. Okay, then this part is the tail. Now, what we need to understand first of all is the sperm is a male reproductive cell. So this is a male reproductive cell. Okay. So this male reproductive cell, it carries the genetic material from the father. So it carries the genetic material. So the genetic material, the DNA, genetic material is carried by this cell, and it is responsible for fertilizing the ovum, the female reproductive cell. So it fertilizes the ovum. So its job is to carry this genetic material, then transfer this genetic material, exchange the genetic material with the ovum so that the baby can be formed. Of course, the process is so complicated, but what I just want you to know is that the sperm is a male reproductive cell, and it carries the genetic material. Then this it fertilizes the ovum. Okay. Now coming back to the structure. So the head, we said the head has the acrosome and the nucleus. The nucleus is actually the one that carries the genetic material. So this genetic material of the sperm is stored in the nucleus. So this nucleus carries the genetic material. Okay? It carries the genetic material of the sperm. Then there's this part which we call the acrosome. So the acrosome is an enzyme-filled part of the sperm. So this part is filled with enzymes. Okay, we have enzymes like acrosine. Okay, so this part is filled with enzymes. Now, why do we need these enzymes? So what you should also know is that during fertilization, let me just draw a rough structure of the ovum. So when the sperm comes like that, okay, so this sperm wants to penetrate the ovum. It wants to penetrate the membrane of the ovum. So for it to penetrate the membrane of the ovum, it has to release enzymes. So these enzymes are released from the acrosome. Okay, they are released from the acrosome. Then it's these enzymes now that begin to digest. So these enzymes, they do what? They digest this membrane covering the ovum. so that the sperm can penetrate the ovum. So one more thing, the acrosome, this is an enzyme-filled part of the sperm. So it's filled with enzymes. So these enzymes are released during fertilization. They are released so that the sperm can penetrate that membrane. So they will digest the membrane, then the sperm enters the membrane. Okay. Then the nucleus, we said this carries the genetic material of the sperm. So we need this genetic material to fuse with the genetic material from the female cell. Then a baby will be formed. Yeah. Then we have the mitochondria. So this mitochondria, the main function of this mitochondria is to generate ATP. So to produce or to generate ATP. Okay, energy. So this energy is needed for the movement of the sperm. So the sperm has to move towards the ovum so that fertilization can occur. So the mitochondria will help us with generation of ATP, energy needed for the sperm to move. Then the tail helps the sperm swim towards the ovum. So in the female reproductive organ, in the female reproductive body, so the sperm will be swimming. Now, for the sperm to swim, to propel itself towards the ovum, the tail helps us to do that. So the function of the tail is simply to help the sperm swim towards the ovum so that fertilization can occur. Okay, so with this few information, let's now go back and answer the question together. So part 1 says identify parts labeled D and E. So D, we simply say acrosome. Part E is the nucleus, you can see. So we said this is the acrosome, remember? An enzyme-filled part of the sperm. Then this part is the nucleus. This part here is the nucleus. Okay. Then remember, if they ask you for this part, you would have said the mitochondria. Okay, this, if they pointed, what is this part here? What is this part? Should have said mitochondria. Okay, explain the function of the part labeled F. So we know that F is the tail. By the way, you can also call the tail, you can also call it the flagellum. Okay, you can also call it the flagellum. Okay, so explain the function of the part labeled F, the tail or the flagellum, whichever way do you want to use. So the tail or the flagellum, just use one, helps the sperm swim, we can say move towards the ovum. Or some other people would say it propels the sperm towards the ovum. So any is okay. Okay, yeah. So part B says, what substance produced by the cervix enable the sperm to swim in the female reproductive tract? So the cervix will produce mucus. Now this mucus is usually alkaline, and it's mucus, so it's slippery. So if it's slippery, it will help the sperm move freely and swim towards the ovum. So what substance is produced by the cervix enable the sperm to swim in the reproductive tract? The answer is mucus. Okay, part C says, explain why only one sperm fertilizes the ovum. So explain why only one sperm fertilizes the ovum. So what I also want you people to know, let me come back down here. So let me come back here. So during fertilization, remember we said, so this is my rough structure of the ovum. There's the nucleus there. There's also another polar body, but I won't draw all the structures. Okay, so what I just want you to know is that this ovum is surrounded by a membrane. This membrane is called the zona pellucida, if you want to know. Zona pellucida. So this is simply a fertilization membrane. Now, let's say the sperm arrives. So, of course, there are many sperms that will arrive at the same time. So the sperm arrives and it's looking at this ovum. It's looking at this ovum. So what will happen is that, remember we said the sperm has the acrosome. So from the acrosome, enzymes will be released, and these enzymes will digest this membrane. Once these enzymes digest the membrane, then the head of the sperm will enter. It's very important that the head enters because we are only interested in the genetic material. So the head of the sperm enters to begin fertilization, of course. Now, once the head enters, there's another reaction now that occurs. You can call this the zonal reaction. Okay. Now, what happens is the sperm, one sperm with its head filled with the nucleus, remember the nucleus as genetic material, enters. Then this zona pellucida, or you can just say this, the membrane surrounding the ovum, it becomes impermeable. It becomes impermeable to other sperms. So what happens is it hardens. So this structure here now, this membrane, becomes hard. So it hardens and becomes impermeable to other sperms. This is very important so that only one sperm is able to fertilize one egg. Okay, to prevent what we call polyspermy. Polyspermy. So polyspermy is a situation where more than one sperm is able to fertilize the egg, and that is what we don't want to see. So there could be complications. So we don't want complications. So the zonal reaction, it's a situation now where, so after this sperm enters, so after one sperm enters the membrane, so after one sperm enters the ovum, a fertilization membrane, which we're calling the zona pellucida, hardens. It hardens. This prevents other sperms from entering, thereby preventing what we are calling polyspermy. Okay, so let's now go back and answer this question. We can simply say after one sperm enters the ovum, you can say a fertilization membrane or you can say the zona pellucida, okay, hardens. This hardens. It hardens, becomes hard and becomes impermeable so that no any other sperm is able to penetrate it. This is the zonal reaction. Okay, so it is triggered, it's usually triggered by the reaction that goes on inside there. When fertilization occurs, once the sperm enters, touches there, then the zonal reaction is triggered. So it hardens, preventing other sperms. So preventing other sperms from entering. Okay. So this thereby, so thus preventing polyspermy. Okay, so by now you know what polyspermy is. Okay, the last question says distinguish between a sperm and an ovum. So what's the difference between a sperm and an ovum? 2 marks. So we can just bring out 2 points. So we can compare the size. We can talk about the parts that they have. Okay, so someone can simply say a sperm. So the sperm is small, usually motile. It's able to move on its own. Remember, it has the tail, so you can say it's able to move on its own, or you can just say it's motile. It's able to move on its own and has a tail. While an ovum is large. Remember, you can see that so many sperms will cling around the ovum. The ovum is larger than the sperms. So the ovum is large, not able to move on its own. So you can just say non-motile, and has no tail. And has no tail. Okay, so if you want, you can even talk about the cytoplasm, but it's okay. So this would give you the entire 9 marks. And this brings us to the end of this video. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, don't forget to share it with your friends. Hit that like button and follow me for more.